today we're going to be looking at day 2 of acing the algebra star. The first thing we're going to be looking at and reviewing is the laws of exponents. These rules will be available to you on your formula chart. So to access your formula chart, it will be a clickable item on the computer screen within the STAR testing um, site. So the first rule that we're going to focus on is the product of powers. So when we are multiplying two bases together, so I'm multiplying A times A, we are going to add our exponents. So we add our exponents. So for the number 1, I have x squared times x cubed. So we are going to add our exponents, and we have x to the 5th. For number 2, when we have numbers involved, the first thing I like doing is kind of grouping my numbers together. That way I have numbers together and then I have my variables together. So for this one we have 5 times negative 2, and then x squared times x to the 7th. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, and then I have 9 x's in total because I added 2 and 7. When we look at quotient of powers, so I am dividing the same base, I'm going to subtract my exponents. So again, we are subtracting. And I always like to move everything to my biggest exponent. So if my biggest exponent is on the bottom, I'll move everything to the bottom. If it's on the top, I'll move it to the top. So for number 1, my biggest exponent is on the top. So we are going to take y to the 6th and subtract 4. This gives me y squared. So that is how we would do number 1. And for number 2, we're going to start with the number. So 27 divided by 42. 27 can't go any 42, but I can divide by, let's see what we can divide. So I'm going to type in alpha y equals, enter 27 over 42, and I'm going to see what this fraction simplifies to, and we get 9/14. So we did the numbers, we get 9 over 14, and then 5 minus 1, because if there is no exponent, it's just a 1, gives us x to the 4th. So that would be my final answer for that one. Let's look at power of a power next. So for this one, it's going to be slightly different because we have parentheses involved. So if you have two exponents side by side, we're going to multiply them or distribute. So we distribute or multiply our exponents. So for the first one, I'm going to take my 2 on the outside, multiply it by 3, and 3 times 2 gives me x to the 6th. For anything raised to the half power, so number 2, I'm going to distribute my half power to everything on the inside. So 1/2 is an exponent, so it's a tiny number, so it's going to stay a tiny number. So 64 to the half power, so 64 to the 1/2, and And then 4 times 1/2 is 2, so x squared. 12 times 1/2 is 6, so y to the 6th. Now, 64 to the 1/2 power is not 32. We are not taking 64 and dividing it by 2. I am taking 64 and I'm going to raise it to the 1/2 power, or 1 divided by 2, which is 8. So my final answer would be 8x squared y to the 6th. Okay. I'm running out of room for number 3, but you can write that off to the side and practice it on your own. So let's move on to negative exponents. So with negative exponent, so anything raised to a negative number, we are essentially going to move it wherever it wants to go. So if I have a negative exponent on top, we would essentially take it and move it to the bottom where it would become positive or happy. So if we look at number 1, I have negative 5 b to the negative 2. Now, keep in mind that there is no parentheses in this problem, so this negative 2 only belongs to the b. So go ahead and circle that term, so that way you are not moving the negative 5, because we only want to move that b variable. So when I move it, we should get negative 5 over b squared. Okay. So number 2, we have multiple rules that we can use. What I'm going to do is use the product rule along with the negative exponent rule. So if I look at the product rule, I'm going to add 2 and negative 4. So 2 and negative 4 gives us a to the negative 2. And when I take a to the negative 2 and I want to make it positive, we would have 1 over a squared. So again, we're taking this and moving it. Finally, with number 3, again, this one is power of a power. So I have x to the negative 14, bring over y cubed. And the only term with a negative exponent is x. So it is the only thing that I moved to the bottom. And we get y cubed over x to the positive 14. And that would be our final answer. Okay. Now let's look at the zero power rule. So with the zero power rule, our answer will always equal 1. So it always equals 1. Let's look at number 1. So here's what I'm going to do. We are going to use we got to get rid of the parentheses first. So we're going to use the power of the power rule. This gives us w to the negative 2 times 4 squared w squared. So to go ahead and get that number sorted out, 4 squared is going to give us 16. And then if I have w to the negative 2 and w to the positive 2, when I add these two terms together, we get 16w to the 0. Because negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So again, anything raised to the 0 power equals 1. So 16 times 1 equals 16. This one was kind of drawn out, but I wanted you to see how it works. And that is all of our exponent rules. Again, these will be available to you on the Staar formula chart. Moving on, we have Box method or FOIL. So we can simplify the following expressions using Box method or FOIL. Now I will show you one of each. So for number 1, I'm going to use FOIL. So FOIL represents first, outside, inside, last. So I'm going to take my first term and multiply them. So 2 times negative 3x gives us a negative 6x squared. Outside I have positive 10x. 3 times a negative 3 is negative 9x. And 3 times 5 is positive 15. So the only step that we have left is to combine like terms. And then 10 minus 9 is positive 1x. And then we can bring down our leftovers to get our final answer. For number 2, I see that I have 2 terms being multiplied by 3 terms. So the way that we do this using box method is I'm going to draw a box. And I'm going to have 2 rows and 3 columns. So 2 rows, 3 columns. I'm going to take x and positive 1 and put it on the side. And then the 2x squared plus 3x plus 12 goes on the top. And I'm going to be multiplying these together. So for the first one, I have 2x squared times 1x. Gives us 2x cubed. Then I take my x and multiply by 3x to get 3x squared. X times 12 gives us 12x. Okay, then I'm going to take my positive 1 and multiply it. And all I really have to do is kind of copy it down. Alright, so once we get to this point, what we're going to do is add the diagonals. So I add these 2, and then I'll add these 2. So 2x plus 3x gives us positive 5x squared. 3 plus 12 gives us a positive 15x. And then I bring down my leftovers. And we're done. So whichever way you prefer, it's totally up to you. So I'm going to show you number 3, how to find the area using FOIL. So again, the hint for this one is that area is length times width. So I'm going to take x plus 1 and multiply it by 2x squared plus 3x plus 12. Again, same problem as before, but now we're looking at it a little bit differently. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my x and I'm going to multiply it by the 3 terms in the second set of parentheses. And since this is a variable, that means my variables are going to get bigger. So we have 2x cubed plus 3x squared plus 12x. Again, my variables got larger. Then I'm going to take my positive 1 and do the same thing. And what I like to do is kind of stack them. That way my variables that are similar line up. and then we add them together. We have 2x cubed plus 5x squared plus 15x plus 12. So as you can see, no matter what way we use, we still wound up with the same answer. Again, if you have any questions regarding anything on this page, please let your teacher know. Come see us during fair time. And for right now, we're going to move on to the next page. So the final thing that we're going to be looking at today is factoring. Now, we're going to start off by factoring this expression, and then I'm going to show you a trick to help you. If you don't know how to factor, you can always go the backwards way. But for now, factoring. We have this fancy little chart up at the top. So we are going to be using the diamond method. Again, I'm going to draw my x. And what I'm going to be doing is taking a times c for the top. So a times c for the top, which 1 times 8 is going to give us 8. B goes on the bottom, so 6. Now what I need to do is find the factors of 8 that add up to get 6. So what are the factors of 8? Again, both of these numbers are positive, so I'm going to be getting a positive number. That's what I want. So the factors of 8, we have 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. Again, we are wanting a positive 6. So when I add these terms together, 1 and 8 gives me 9, 2 and 4 is going to give me 6. So these are the terms that I am going to use, 2 and 4. When we divide by a, I'm going to move it to the front. And our factors are going to be x plus 2 and x plus 4. Again, I like dividing my factors by a because I automatically know that that is going to go to the front. So let's look at the next problem, number 2. Again, we have a problem where our leading coefficient is going to be 1, and I'm going to again use the diamond method to help me answer this problem. So I'm going to draw my x, and then I have 1 times negative 6 gives me negative 6, and I'm looking for a negative 5. So what factors of negative 6 will add up to give me a negative 5? So in order to get a negative 5, one of my factors has to be positive, one has to be negative. So let's go ahead and write this out. The factors of negative 6 is going to be, I have negative 1 and positive 6. I have positive 1 and negative 6. We have negative 2 and positive 3. Or positive 2 and negative 3. So those are all of the possible factors that could get me a negative 6. Now, let's add them together to see which gives me a negative 5. So I'm going to change all of my multiplication symbols to a plus sign, and we're going to add. So negative 1 plus 6 is positive 5. 1 plus negative 6 is negative 5. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, and then finally negative 1. So the set of numbers I'm looking for is right here. So again, I have a negative 6 and a positive 1. And when I put it over 1, we get 1x minus 6 and 1x plus 1, which means A would be my answer. Alright, and finally, number 3. Again, I'm going to be using diamond method just so we can see it. You can always, if you forget, take your terms right here, and you can use foil or box and multiply it out. But for the sake of this section, I'm going to be factoring. So again, I'm going to draw my x. We have 6 times 5, which is positive 30. And what factors of that would give me positive 13? Alright, so let's draw our factor tree. And I'm wanting the factors of 30 that add up to give me a positive 13. So in order for both of these numbers to be positive, that means my factors also need to be positive. So we have 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and then 5 times 6. And when I add up all of these terms, I get 31, 17, 13, and 11. So the two terms I'm going to be using is 3 and 10. So we got a positive 3 and a positive 10. And again, for this one, we need to put each of these numbers over our A value. So put 6 here and here. And if you can reduce this number, go ahead and do so. Which means 3 and 6, that can reduce to 1 over 2. 10 over 6, that can reduce to 5 over 3. So when I go to write my answer, and both of these numbers are positive, I get 2x plus 1 and 3x plus 5, which means C would be the correct answer. And that's all I have for today. Again, if you have any questions, please let your teacher know, and I hope to see you in the